After that, if you would, please try to wrap your comments up. Our first person to address the commission is Ms. Deborah Moore. Ms. Moore, good evening.
Honorable Mayor, County Commissioners, and guests, since October of 2017, I have been attending the monthly Industrial Development Board meetings. I've concluded that no group of citizens in this county has more power to change it than the IDB by bringing in dozens of industries. My first question is how a non-elected body of citizens receives such power. If you as an elected commissioner make decisions that your constituents disagree with, they can simply vote you out of office. However, when non-elected people are given huge powers, there is no recourse for the citizens to bring about change. Early on, I was given a written policy that the IDB uses to configure pilots for the county. This policy gives tax break percentages to industries based upon their investment in our community. Yet during the April 2018 meeting, that policy was ignored when LG requested that hard figures be used in their pilot rather than percentages. The IDB approved. This means that LG will not see incremental tax increases like you and I do during their 20-year pilot. This is clearly a violation of that IDB written policy. And why were more tax breaks given when LG had already built nearly 50% of its plant? There was no need. And why shouldn't these companies be required to use local businesses for their needs rather than going to Nashville or someone else, since we're the ones giving them the tax breaks? In addition, the IDB has power to make decisions that impact residents of the county without even informing them. My community would never have known about the nearby proposed mega industrial site had the Leaf Chronicle not released information discovered in Robertson County. We, as well as thousands around the county, are sorely against the site. Yet I believe the citizens deserve to know what's coming to their communities. Yet the IDB refers to all its projects by code names so that taxpayers do not know what's happening until deals are signed. Another example is Atlas BX and the concern over toxic chemicals. Shouldn't that neighborhood have known about this deal before it was proposed? Even now, there's the possibility that the IDB is negotiating with more landowners around Highway 79 for additional industry. The influx of industry has already taxed our infrastructure, jammed our roads, and overburdened our school system. Our citizens are weary of the traffic and increased taxes to build more schools. Even though the board is called the Industrial Development Board, it is now selling the industrial property to fast food chains and has planned a pilot for a retail business in the old Kmart complex. I believe it's time for elected officials to take and make the crucial decisions to have a planned growth for our county rather than giving that power to a group of unelected people. Thank you. I will be in the next couple of days sending out a 5-page document with lots of research to you. My contact information would be on there if you have any questions or want to talk about it.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Mr. Damon Dozier.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Thank you for having me. I'm representing a group in the red T-shirts over here. We're ASAP in Montgomery County. We're the Allies for Substance Abuse Prevention. This group was developed after a meeting about opioid crisis in our nation, our state, and our county. Our mission is to empower parents, youth, community leaders, Montgomery County, as we work together in reducing substance abuse, thereby creating a caring, healthy, productive environment. Our aim is to reduce the abuse of multiple substances, drugs, alcohol, tobacco. If you want to join us, you can find us on Facebook by that name, Allies for Substance Abuse Prevention, Montgomery County. So please do like us. It helps us out, helps promote our issues, our mission. The next upcoming, or the thing I'd like to publicize at this point is that October 27th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at several local pharmacies, Harris Family Pharmacy, Sangle Pharmacy, and Walgreens, we're having Drug Take Back Day. That's a DA national project, but we're trying to man it for our local. We're being joined by the DEA agents of our county. The group generally meets every third Wednesday at 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Come join us. We're over at the library most of those times. This next meeting we will have is going to be on a Tuesday, actually, because we're training folks to be more effective in the fight against the opioid crisis. And we'll be trying in the future to train people, lay people, non-medical people. I'm a medical doctor, but non-medical people to use Narcan to save lives and basic life support to save lives. And that's what we're talking about these days. It's lives. It's not just a number, okay? But it's a pleasure to be here, and that's about all I have. But if you see the red T-shirts around, if you want to wear one with us, just come on out. Thank you. Thank
you, Dr. Dozier.
Yes.
Mr. Barry Smitto.
Thank you. I keep coming here because y'all are the foundation of government. I'll talk to you about cats next time. That's sort of kept me from talking to you about this important thing. Relevant to this speech, a Scientific American article said depressed people are much more in touch with reality. I have major depression from having to represent myself in federal court because MetLife conceals so many documents no attorney would take the case. I won, but I often had no money for medical treatment of a potentially fatal internal eye cancer. There's so many violations in my case, and I found 51 other cases like that. I also found where MetLife rigged bids to increase sales of the policies, and I found where the Obama administration top officials would not prosecute, and I found where they gave him huge contributions, the exact people who signed the bid rigging agreement. I contacted Marsha Blackburn. I had many prominent people here contact Marsha Blackburn about what all the crimes that were happening. She wouldn't do anything. So my parents suffered and passed away during that time, and there's a lot of crimes I just don't have time to tell you about. Before being left for dead by our government, I was like many Americans in being part of our culture of entertainment and media. My suffering helps me to understand our culture is partially responsible for the fact that the U.S. has 57 times as many school shootings as all the other G7 nations combined. Hollywood stars tell us what we should do, but the programs they profit from are full of violence, blood, and murder. Parents sit with their children and watch shows like CSI where people are joking around while bodies are dissected. Big corporations profit from violent music and games that they sell. I started researching, as I was left for dead, I started researching on crimes that corporations were committing and nobody was being prosecuted. You can see them at 10deadlycorporateCrimePatterns.blogspot.com. 10deadlycorporateCrimePatterns.blogspot.com. One example is Wachovia Bank laundered $378 billion for the Mexican cartels that had murdered 150,000 people in the last decade. No one was prosecuted. In 2008, the UN's drugs chief wrote drug money was the only liquid capital available to banks on the brink of collapse. So I've got 30 seconds left. The opioid crisis, those people should definitely be prosecuted, but people, they're never prosecuted. I have multiple quotes from the DOJ that say the fines do not take care, they don't stop the crimes, and the corporations just keep doing it, but then the DOJ just keeps, they just keep fining them. We all make mistakes, and one of the things that I feel like the local things, when it's business first, that's what leads to things like the Atlas BX, the CCC gun range. The Atlas BX people need to talk to them. There's also Clarksville Safe and Strong. I hope y'all will get in touch with them. CCC, there are people who live out there that say they are violating the zoning codes, and they were not notified of the first zoning hearing regarding that. I come up here because I hope, you know, the Bible says seek justice, help the oppressed, and help the poor. And Ephesians 6:12 says we're not fighting flesh and blood. It's cosmic force of evil, powers and principalities, wickedness in high places. And there's just so many things that are going on. And I find joy in Romans 8:28, which says God uses all things together for good for those who believe. We need people who don't believe too. I sin every day, make big mistakes, but we definitely have a lot of big problems here. And the fact that no corporation is being prosecuted for all these different types of crimes, there's something very wrong there. And I don't have time to tell you about it, but if you'll check out the website, and I will be emailing the information to our commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smitto. We'll now call our meeting to order. First item on our agenda, we have 3 presentations. We're going to have an update on our school system, an update from Mr. John Patterson with our airport authority, and then on our project update, Mr. Nick Powell. First up is our Director of Schools, Mr. Millard House. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, and good evening, Commissioners. For those of you that I have not had the opportunity to meet, welcome. My name is Millard House. I'm the Director of Schools with the Clarksville-Montgomery County School District. And what I'd like to do over the next 5 to 6 minutes is really to give you a strategic overview in reference to the work that's happening in the Clarksville-Montgomery County School District. For those commissioners, those 10 or so commissioners that have been here, you guys received this presentation before in the form of a big placemat that I gave you. I'm sure you can remember that. So I've chosen to mix things up just a little bit and make it a little bit more interactive for everyone in reference to the presentation. But as you all know, the let's see here. There we go. Last year, our focus was on rising from good to great. This year, we want to rise beyond 2018, 2019. Of course, our mission is simple, which is to educate and empower our students to reach their potential. Our vision is for all students to graduate not only college, and career ready. And that's a key word, and. It's extremely important for our students to not only be college ready, but to be career ready as well. We know about all the industry opportunities and jobs that will be available. We want to ensure that our children have the opportunity to be prepared for all of them. I'll walk you through 4 areas pretty quick here and provide this information for you to access when you need it to. The first is to improve student achievement. And we have a few different subcategories and have a quick clip that I'll share with you in reference to what this means.
Social and emotional learning, or SEL, is how children and adults acquire and effectively apply the knowledge, attitudes, and skills they need to understand and manage emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain positive relationships, and make responsible decisions. Participants in the district stakeholder feedback groups expressed a need for more social and emotional support for our students. Supporting our students in this way will help them be more successful in school and in life by increasing their ability to appropriately manage their emotions and interact with peers and adults. This will have a positive impact with more time and focus on learning. More importantly, SEL contributes to a safe and mutually respectful community.
So when we talk about students and improving what happens with students, you can't teach a student that has some social and emotional issues. So this is something that we've allowed to climb the list of our priorities over the course of this school year, and we've made a big investment in. To give you an example, many students in Montgomery County that have social and emotional issues, it may take them, if they have the wrong type of insurance, 3 months to see the right doctor, the right psychologist, psychometrist. Well, we've put these these services in-house to where we can actually provide those services immediately and get students the assistance that they might need. We also, in terms of student improvement or student achievement and improving that achievement, we've personalized our student learning through a blended direct instructional technology blend. And this means everything that we do now is really involving technology. Many of you that have nieces, nephews, children, grandchildren, you may notice if they're 8th grade and above, they're actually bringing home one-to-one technology. It's important for us to ensure that we ante up what's necessary for them to stay in the digital age, and we've done that through blended technology. We also are enhancing our early learning opportunities. We know that in the state of Tennessee, it has become a little bit more difficult to acquire the funding for early learning in terms of pre-K. We have 17 classrooms of pre-K. In my opinion, we should probably have 2 to 3 classrooms at every elementary school of pre-K, but it's just not the case. Right now, the funding structure in the state of Tennessee is that it's a grant fund or grant funded in order to get early childhood classrooms. So we have 17 in the district, 24 elementaries. It's what we had if you did the math and you had 2 to 3 elementary, 2 to 3 pre-Ks at every elementary school. You can see how many classrooms, in my opinion, that we would need now to actually have a place to place those children is a completely different ballgame, and I'll talk about that here in just a little bit. Strengthening our portfolio of academic offerings. This year, we're extremely proud of utilizing what we have. We have a couple new programs that I'll mention. One of them is our language immersion kindergarten program at Barksdale Elementary on Madison. We're extremely proud of these students, kindergarten students that are completely immersed in Spanish. The only thing that they will hear throughout the entire school year is in Spanish. So they're acquiring a different language. The brain development for them will be completely different than their peers. And they're seeing something completely different as well. So we're excited about that program. We have just as many kids on the waiting list for that program as we have in the program. So we're expecting it to grow. We also have a brand new program at TCAT that we're extremely proud of. These are students that have foregone the traditional focus in reference to high school. These are 11th and 12th graders that during their 11th and 12th grade year, instead of having the opportunity to play athletics or cheerleading or some of the traditional things that they might do, they are going to school from 10 to 5 at TCAT. And what they're getting at TCAT is different. They are in the morning, they're getting their high school equivalent through an online platform. And in the evening and in the afternoons, they're actually taking college course classes at TCAT, whether it be mechatronics, diesel mechanic, HVAC, several different options that they have. When they graduate from high school, they'll actually graduate with the TCAT certification, or CAN, or several hours towards it. So we're excited about many of those students being able to walk right out of the door of that high school and be employable. So that's what I mean by our academic offerings. We also want to continue to realign our Ready Graduate Initiative and ensuring that our graduates are strong as they leave Montgomery County schools. The second area I'll talk about to the right there is maximizing our employee capacity. And there are 3 different areas that I'll go through real quick. The first is boosting our social media presence. This is something that everything from recruitment and selection to communicating with parents that we've really ramped up this year. Of course, with what we saw in Montgomery County, with a person that was at large, a majority of what we did in communicating with parents was on social media today, or through some type of communication that had to do with social media. It's just how many people are communicating, and it's something that we've moved closely towards as well, even with our recruitment and selection of employees as well. We're also enhancing curriculum resources and individualized professional learning opportunities. We do in-house professional development that we're very, very proud of. Many people go out to a grandiose conference every summer. We actually offer our own conference called Engage, and we build the capacity of not only our students, but our employees not only during the school year, but also during the summer. So we offer quality professional development opportunities for our staff on a consistent basis. The third area, next to last here, is improving efficiency and effectiveness. It's extremely important for us. And when we talk about improving that effectiveness, we start off with transportation. We're a growing school district. We run about 320 school buses every day to pick up about 29,000 students. And we want to continuously improve. And that's something that's extremely important to us. Generally, during that first month of school year, that's that tough period that we're trying to figure out how many buses, how many kids, but we're continuously improving, and it's looking better and better as we move forward. So the next area is implementing electronic medical records for our on-site nurses and expand our on-site clinics. Much like the county, we actually share a collaborative in terms of our clinics, and we're excited about what that looks like. We're moving towards electronic, not only records for medical records, but also in our HR systems as well. We've completely gone paperless in HR. We've gone paperless, which we followed the commission in having iPads and have seen savings realized already as time has moved forward. We also want to improve our organizational efficiency in terms of technology. I talked about this earlier in terms of our students and what they're doing on a daily basis, and we've seen that improvement happen already. And the last area is engaging the public for support for student achievement. I've vowed to get to as many churches, as many civic organizations, as many venues like this to tell our story, to tell about what we need, what we're trying to do better. I also have vowed to ensure that we grab as much feedback around what can be done better. So not only in bringing in our employees for surveys, also individuals from the community as well, to figure out what we can do better, because even though we're working hard, we know that we can move forward and do better. And the last couple things is just our focus on expansion of community partnerships. This is an example of a gentleman, young man who's a senior in an AP class that won a car that we're excited about. That's something that happens on an annual basis. And lastly, here,
the data shows that parents, students, and school employees have embraced and most times prefer going online to access the information they need. With that in mind, a newly designed cmcss.net webpage is being launched, giving users a better experience both.
So I encourage you to go check out our new website. It's up and going. We're excited about it. We feel it's informative. We feel it's easier to navigate through. This was something that we wanted to make sure that our community members, our parents, our students knew what was going on so they could understand more about our school district. Mayor, I'd be glad to take any questions at this point. If not, thank you for your time.
Any questions of Mr. House? Commissioner Knight?
Yeah, so I heard you mention, and thank you for coming up here to provide this presentation.
Sure.
It's actually pretty good. I heard you mention about social media. So my wife's been mentioning to me how awesome Class Dojo is throughout the school. But the only issue is that only certain teachers utilize Class Dojo. So what's the feasibility of using Class Dojo throughout all the schools in each of the district for all grade levels to have teachers communicate with parents directly and often instantaneously?
Yep. So Class Dojo is a app that certain schools can utilize. It's not required school by school. It's not even required. In some schools, only some teachers utilize it. So it's just their means versus sending home an email. So we haven't made that stance. We don't practice a top-down approach. We've seen that it's been effective in some instances. I actually, as a parent, have experienced Class Dojo and have experienced it a more traditional way, and both have worked for me as a parent of 2 students in the district right now. So I'm glad it's going well in some instances, but I don't see us moving towards telling every school to utilize Class Dojo. It's, again, a principal's choice, a classroom teacher's choice to utilize the different venues that are out there.
Thank you.
You're more than welcome.
I'm gonna go out of order a little bit. Ms. Pritchard, your hand was, I saw your hand, and Mr. Knight's hand. I know you're not used to pushing the button, but I'm gonna recognize you next.
I'm sorry. Mr. House, I understand this language immersion program. Is it only right now at Barksdale? Because I have heard that it was something that was in the works. And I really think it would be beneficial in more than just like neighborhoods like Barksdale.
So it is a program that is currently just at Barksdale Elementary, and it's a school within a school. So we wanted to pilot it. What we have done in terms of spots available, we've saved spots in every quadrant of the city, so the 4 quadrants of the city. So we won't take more students in quadrant 1 or the south quadrant so that, there's less, and we tried to put it as close to the center of the city as possible. That's why we ended up moving towards Barksdale. As the program grows, it will eventually outgrow Barksdale, and then we'll figure out probably in 2020, 2021, where the program will be. I've started 2 of these schools before in my experience, and the 2 schools that I started in Oklahoma are flourishing. They're doing extremely well, but it's not a program that you can have the resources to be able to place into every school. That would be fabulous, but not feasible. So we try to do things within reason, within our budget, and then we talk about the human resources as well. You're not going to find that number of Spanish-speaking teachers to be able to place in several different schools. So we want to do it well where it is and make sure that it's flourishing at a level that we know that is acceptable. You're welcome.
Commissioner Harper?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. House, I appreciate you being here.
Yep.
Quick question for you. I received an email today from one of the school system employees. I think just to bring everybody into the loop at one of these school liaison meetings, at the school board meetings, you mentioned a policy that 20-year employees would be required to pay for the cost of a background check. I mentioned in that meeting that I felt like the commission would be very opposed to that and didn't feel like it would be a good measure to do. Can you tell me what's proceeded with that?
Nothing has proceeded, and let me tell you why and make sure the commission has the right information. The state, there has been statute that has been bestowed upon the school system and school systems across the country that essentially says a background check at the cost of $32 has to be done for every employee if they have not had one. So what we have moved forward to do to make sure that we're in line and step with the law is we've instituted a plan where employees that have not had a background check, they will have to pay in 2 installments. $16 will be drawn out of their check on one occasion and $16 out of the other. If you think about that, and the close to 5,000 employees that we have in the district, it wasn't an item that we could pay for. We would have loved to be able to have the funds to pay for it, but this came to us in the summer after the budget cycle and after the process. So it would have been very difficult. Now, the feedback that we've gotten from teachers has been very minimal in terms of, as a matter of fact, support-wise. I've had a lot of teachers that have emailed me to say, hey, I didn't know that we had individuals that didn't have background checks. And most of our employees do have background checks, but there are some that were grandfathered in quite some time ago that may not have. So as an employee, as a father, and as a district administrator, I'm in support of the process. I didn't like the way it came down from the legislature at a late time period after the budget cycle. I would have loved to be able to come to the commission and say, hey, in February or March, this is what has come down on us, and we would love to be able to receive some additional support to not pass on those dollars to our employees.
Just so we're clear, for the record, I'm very much opposed to the employees having to pay that cost for a background check. I think it's counterproductive, and I wish we would have been included in that discussion to work out some sort of alternatives. Well, I thought that was what was going to happen.
It came to us in the last moment after the budget cycle. We would have loved to be able to have that conversation during the budget cycle. But unfortunately, because of the way it came down to not only us, but every school district in the state, it came down late, unfunded mandate.
Thank you.
Commissioner Leverett?
Thank you, Mr. House, for being here. You actually, Commissioner Pritchard, you actually answered my first question, which was the language immersion program at Barksdale. My second question is, one of your employee capacities is to continue to focus on recruitment and diversity. I recently read a study that said that children do well academically when their teachers, when they have male teachers. What groups are you specifically looking for in your recruitment and diversity efforts?
We're looking for all groups. What we know is, from a diversity standpoint, in terms of Montgomery County, only about little under 3% of our staff is of a diverse nature. When we look at our students, we're about a 46% diverse community. So we've really started, and I actually took my human resources department with me to an HC state diversity training just this past Thursday. And we're starting some continued strategies around what it is to find diverse candidates. And when you think about diversity, those that don't understand diversity may just think black, white, or brown. Right. That's not what it's all about. We're looking for more men. We're looking for more. We're looking for several different entities that can help us really diversify our school district. So we're working hard on it, and our human resources department is one of the big pieces in their strategic work.
Thank you.
Commissioner Knight?
Sir, I promise this is my last question from me, right? But everybody knows I have 7 kids and 5 in the school system, right? And I've been to several of the school board meetings to better understand the process because I have a vested interest in it. That being said, special education is an important topic and a concern to some parents. Tell us what strides to improve special education programs in the county schools that you guys have done. And I know you guys have done a lot of great things so far. So.
Much like the conversation that you and I had before the meeting, special education is extremely important from gifted kids to kids that have challenges. So we look at every child through the lens of an IEP, an individualized education plan, and we let that plan develop around the needs of that not only that child, but also that individualized team that works with that child as well. So to say that we have a focus on an overall special ed plan, it's about the child because every IEP is different and every focus is different. As a father, I have one on the spectrum that's gifted, extremely gifted. I have one on the spectrum that has some speech challenges as well. So I've seen it, myself, and as a child growing up with challenges and being dyslexic, I've lived it as well. So we're very, very focused on continuous improvement and ensuring that we individualize our plans for special education for every child.
Thank you.
Mr. House, thank you so much.
My
Commissioner
pleasure.
Pritchard?
One question, sir. I understand that you are in the recruitment phase. One thing that I've found, and I've talked to a lot of teachers who, having applied to Montgomery County, the process is so slow and so convoluted that there are months that go by before they hear from the county. And so by then they've gone to other counties. Maybe the process of actually vetting and hiring professionals might be re-examined.
And I would beg to differ respectfully, simply because we've made offers and moved towards a process where we can make offers on the spot, sign contracts on the spot in our recruitment efforts now. So we actually send on some of our recruiting trips, principals, others that are helping us. And if the necessary credentials are in place, we can make those hires on the spot. We don't want to miss out on great hires, great talent, and we're trying to make the process and have made strides last year in ensuring that the process is as seamless as possible moving forward. There may have been some issues in the past, but we're continuously striving to get better, and I feel very good about where we are and where we're going. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. House, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Mr. John Patterson. Mr. Patterson, good evening.
It's always difficult to follow a great speaker. Skip to my report and get up there. Everybody should have a copy of my report on your iPads. I hope you've had a chance to review it. This is the second month into our first quarter out at the airport. We are in a time of transition. We have a major construction project going on out at the airport right now with our runway rehabilitation and our taxiway relocation and a replacement of the lighting system on the airfield to a high visibility LED system, which will do two things: create a better runway environment for pilots flying in during inclement weather. It'll also be a huge cost savings with the lowered electricity from the incandescent to us at the airport. So with that in mind, understanding that we don't have our main runway open right now, we do have our secondary runway, which is closing periodically. I would report that our overall traffic so far year to date is down about 52%. And when you've lost half your runways, that's about a correct number. Our fuel to that traffic is down roughly 53%, which is also to be expected when you lose half of your aircraft that are coming through due to the construction that is going on. We did not see as big a drop as we thought we would in the corporate traffic. They are still able to make it in and out, more so than we had planned. Unfortunately, though, when you're dealing with a 4,000-foot runway, they can't put on the type of fuel and be able to take back off after they do. I bring that up because last year was one of the best years that we've had out at the airport for traffic and fuel sales than we've had in 11 years. And our runway was out of commission for the last quarter. So I predict, based on that information and coming out of the construction cycle that we're doing now, that we will see a huge improvement in our sales and in our traffic numbers as we move forward. I think our market share is captured. I think we've gone through a temporary lull because of construction, and I expect great things with the improvements that we've made and our ability to serve the community as we go down the road. With that, I would like to talk a little bit about the three projects that we do have ongoing. The runway project is currently slated to complete no later than November the 11th. We've got 141 days of 195 contractual days in the project complete. We have complete pavement of the runway done. We have the base stone for the taxiway in place, and the lighting system is going in as well. There will be no more off-site hauling, so we shouldn't get any more telephone calls from dirty roads and cars and things of that nature. We've got all the work internalized to the airport now. Overruns on line items and savings have worked out into the airport's favor. The airport the project's not over with yet, so we're not going to go ahead and mention any numbers, but we are a few $1,000s into the airport's favor and about 2 weeks ahead of schedule. So if the weather will hold out, we've had a wet fall as we go into fall, we should finish on time and on budget, which is what everybody likes to hear. The second project that we've got going on is a new construction of a 100 by 120 foot hangar. This hangar is to meet the demand of a transit aircraft that come through. These are our large corporate aircraft that come in and out. This will take these aircraft out of the weather and inclement weather conditions during summer thunderstorms, winter ice storms, and things of that nature. This is a demand that the airport's had already. We've also got approximately 40 aircraft on a waiting list that want to be based in Clarksville. Not all of those aircraft will qualify for this hangar because if we did, it would be full and we couldn't use it for its intended use. But we obviously have the demand. It will be a revenue maker as soon as the doors are open on that hangar. The last project that we currently have underway is a rebuild for the office space for Austin Peay State University, who has announced their aerospace science college degree. It's a rotor wing program that they're offering at the Fort Campbell campus. Their flight lab, classroom, and some administrative offices will be held out at the airport. With this reconstruction, we'll see revenue generated from the rent from Austin Peay State University and the fuel sales to the aircraft on which they fly. And with that, that concludes my report. I would be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson.
Thank you
Good
very
report.
much.
Mr. Nick Powell.
Good evening. Skip, it's ready to go whenever you are. My name's Nick Powell. I'm a Montgomery County engineer, responsible for most of Montgomery County's capital projects. The airport was one of those departments that we're not responsible for. They kind of take that on themselves. Give you a quick update of many of the projects that we've got going on right now and are coming up into the design phase. I won't go through every one of them. You have a written quarterly report, should be in front of you. There's a lot of details in that. I'm going to make it easy, and I'm just going to go through a lot of photos to kind of take you out to each of the project sites and give you a glimpse as if you were out there walking the site with us and we were pointing around for what's going on. The first project, we just recently got done with phase 1 of the court center. That was the addition of 2 courtrooms as well as some office space, jury rooms. We found out just as we were finishing that project that the Tennessee Supreme Court enacted a rule where we were going to have to now put ballistic panels to protect all of the court clerks areas in the judge benches, So in doing that, we've also got some improvements that we are considering and discussing making at the front entry of the lobby. Right now we have 2 lanes that are box scan, people scans, and then we have an eye scanner where employees and other people go in an exit lane. So we're thinking about how we're going to remodel that and adjust that to some of the new court security committee's request. Depending on where you're from, this is either Lafayette or Lafayette Road. So you pick, but it's the same project. It's been going on for a little while. We are right now in the right-of-way phase. There's not a whole lot of site photos per se right now because it's the way it's been for a long time. We're taking this and partnering with Fort Campbell. They came to us back in 2014, I believe, and asked us if we can connect Lafayette Road to where the border is to Fort Campbell so that they could continue on with the 4-lane into the base and turn off into the Sabre heliport area. So we've done that. We've got a grant for that. We're working with local programs for the state of Tennessee. And this is a small project in comparison to other roadway projects, but it still has to go through every hoop and hurdle that you would have to go through with a 3-mile-long project. So we're kind of flattening that curve out a little bit. It's pretty much keeping most of the center line. We're going from the 5-lane segment that's there now down to a 4-lane segment, and then we will taper into Fort Campbell's property and allow them to do their portion of the project whenever they see fit to do that. Like I said, we're in the right-of-way phase. It took a long time to get out of environmental phase. We started that back in 2015, and we just started on right-of-way back at the beginning of 2018, end of 2017. So slow moving on state and federal funding type projects, but we do move them forward. One project with the state that we have prepared for and mostly got completed with by now, our department started a local programs project with Oakland Road over 6 years ago when I first took this position. So it's been in the works for that long, and when the construction phase came along, Mayor Durrett and the TDOT commissioner saw a benefit to merge those 2 construction phases from the Guthrie Highway widening project and our project. So we got one contractor out there. We don't have 2 different contractors meeting up at an intersection and kind of battling that out. So it's worked out well. TDOT's done a good job with that project. Another image from looking southbound at the Oakland Road intersection. This is Oakland Road. We've acquired right-of-way for the future. That's a growing area. We've got the ability to expand that roadway in the future if we needed to. Right now, the current need was only warranting an improved 2-lane. The whole reason for the project was safety. There was multiple accidents on the curves along through there. There are still curves, as you can see, but they're much improved and they're now to state guidelines and requirements. Our largest project we probably got going on right now is phase 2 of Civtan Park. We've been designing that project for a while. It's now in construction phase. This is the imagery layout of what we conceptually plan that project to look like. And if you look at that and kind of gaze into the next image, you can see how it's starting to come together. You can kind of see in the right-hand side where some of the baseball quad is starting to come together with the backstops, the footings. The straight lines you see out there are retaining walls. There's a lot of linear footage of retaining walls to make that site as flat as possible. We have 3 softball fields, the community's first ADA compliant softball baseball field that Buddy Ball will be using, and a large multi-purpose soccer, football, lacrosse area that will accommodate approximately 3 soccer games, practices at the same time, along with additional parking, the roadway infrastructure, site lighting, all the amenities that we will need to make that park complete. And you can kind of look and gauge in size to what phase 1 is with 4 baseball fields, where we're encompassing almost a larger area with phase 2 than what phase 1 took up just in square footage and acreage. So some of the ground features of what we've got going on, this road that you see to the left, right now as it stands today, I hadn't been able to get the photo of this, but that's got base stone on it. We were able to get that down before all this big rain came in. That's a constant battle with a project like this. We will battle the weather from the day we start to the day we end because of the nature of it. Retaining walls, you can see with the black plastic behind that, that's how high that wall will be. This is one of our taller walls at about 12 feet tall when it's said and done. Backstop post for the baseball fields, this is just another phase of construction, how that's put in the ground and moved forward with. We've got a concession stand that's going up on the right-hand side, masonry block unit. That's one of our best ways of vandal resistance type construction because, believe it or not, we do have a lot of vandalism in parks. Jerry Albert, Parks Director, can attest to that. Our contractor will already attest to that because he's already received multiple vandalism issues out there just from the surrounding community since we've started the project. Another view throughout the quad, poles in the middle, light pole bases are being started to be installed. Another image of the concession stand. One project, this is a fantastic facility that EMS has helped guide through along the way. Chief Edwards and his staff will now be housed in this office complex, moving from Haynes Street into this. This is adding a new logistics area, the county's first morgue, and we are setting just off to the right of the images Tenova Healthcare. So as ambulances go out on their visits and they frequent the hospital, they can roll right into this drive-through bay, pick up new logistics supplies, and be back out on the streets. We're actually a little bit further along than what this aerial image shows right here. We do have site lighting on the site from the building, not so much from the parking lot side. What we're at right now, and you can see from your progress report, project is supposed to have been substantially complete back earlier this month. We've been helping the contractor push through and get done with some of his final punch list items. And what our hope is that we're going to have this facility open and ready to go by October 9th, give or take, with final completion. EMS is scheduled to start moving furniture in about the middle of October, followed by all the IT components, the servers, the security components, computers, and that such. And we hope to be fully operational, Chief Edwards, by the beginning of November if everything goes right. This is a new training facility within inside of there. You can see all the floor boxes will have all kinds of capabilities to have trainings for EMS and also an emergency kind of response area should we need one in this area. Kitchenette area, lobby. Fredonia Community Center is probably the project that we're in the most active stage of design right now. We are probably about 75% complete with the design phase. We hope to be fully done with plans at the end of this year so that we're ready for subcontractors bid early in the year. The way the image looks right now, you see a big, large parking lot kind of to the left of the T-shaped structure that's in brown. Phase 1 really encompasses mainly the building structure, the community center. We wanted to get that developed first to kind of create a draw there. That large parking lot to the left is actually being shifted up more to the right-hand side of that facility. We purchased or will be purchasing a piece of property to shift that parking lot and really be able to leave the back side of the property for the park components that are going to be in phase 2. So we're well on our way. We're on schedule with that project now. And one project that's probably a couple of months trailing the design phase of Fredonia is the Rotary Park Nature Center. I believe you've got an agenda item tonight for a grant that was received by the Parks Department for this project. Design is started. We're not far enough along to really give a whole lot of details about it at this point, but this is a site rendering to show you what is proposed for that facility. Another project that we're assisting with, the library is mainly managing this project internally, is the internal renovations to the existing library at Veterans Plaza. What you see in front of you is just normal windows and doors that used to be exhibits and kind of shelving that they pulled out and made better use of that space. In the background are some new private meeting rooms, I guess, classroom or study hall type areas that they've done. That's a view from the inside looking out. And this is their new teen area that's up on the second floor. They now have this fully shelved with all the seating and everything. My daughters have actually been up there to take a peek at it, and they really enjoyed it. So I got some firsthand opinions from what they thought about it. New restrooms on the first and second floor. This is the second floor restrooms that have been completed, and they're moving down on the first floor now. Project is mainly on schedule, and they should be complete probably by the middle of next month, I believe. Public Safety Training Complex, I believe this is the last one I'm going to be reporting on tonight. Sheriff's Department's kind of managing parts of that project. Their biggest goal right now is to get a firing range out there to where they can start holding a lot of their practices and training. That's more toward the middle of the screen that you see. This is an image created early on. They are actively in the design phase with our architects and engineers right now to secure geotechnical testing and sound studies to make sure that the area that we have in this lot, this is a large acreage, even though it looks small on screen, that we have everything taken care of, and we're studying that properly before they engage and move forward with all their steps. You have additional projects that's in your quarterly report update that I'm not going to report on. There's some details in there. There are upcoming projects that I will report on in future quarterly reports, but if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Any questions of Mr. Powell? Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nick, thank you for coming out. I've always said I was amazed at how you juggle everything that you do. The one question I had, though, was, has there been any word at all from the state on fixing that utility problem on Highway 79?
I believe I'm going to have to leave that up to TDOT to answer that, because that is not an issue that I can answer. I do know from what TDOT has told me, just from referencing and asking that question, that they do have some light poles that created a conflict when the project was said and done, and they are actively working on that. Since I am not part of TDOT's leadership team, I don't know all the details and ins and outs of that, but I do know they are taking that issue seriously, and the right lane will stay closed until they can rectify that situation.
Okay, I was just wondering if they had trickled down any word to you at all.
I'll get you an answer in the morning.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Knight.
I just want to say thank you for getting up there and putting on a pretty good presentation. And I want to say that now that I'm a member of the library board, I actually had the opportunity to go down there. Even though I frequent the library regularly with my kids, I went down there and took a look at the construction, and I have to say it's actually going pretty well. That being said, prior to actually getting elected, I had individuals while the library was being thought of as far as like having another library on the north side of Clarksville. There were questions in regards to having a library in the Fredonia area, believe it or not. So, and one suggestion provided to me was that utilizing a community center / pseudo library. So my question is, what, if any, are there any plans to have a pseudo library incorporated into that community center in Fredonia?
That was not currently in the plans, because that is a historic reservation of the current facility out there. The library has a strategic plan that they have shared with past commissions, and I'm sure the library director will will share that with y'all soon for what her goals are for the library throughout Montgomery County in the future. This branch library that you were referring to is the first step of many other steps. But no, we haven't really discussed incorporating any type of pseudo-library branch into the community center portion, mainly because the facility is limited in space. We're just going in and renovating the interiors, and the components of that have really already been designated as far as what we're going to use that space for. That's a good idea. I don't see the library director here tonight, so I'm not going to speak for her as far as what her goals are for each area, each pocket of the community, but I do know she has a long-term plan for that she shared, and she probably will soon.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Woodruff.
Thank you, Mayor. We're going to meet all of the ADA and environmental compliance regulations.
For which project? I mean, we try to do that for any project.
Are we going to meet them?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's our goal. Now, it's not to say that there's something that doesn't slip past us. We're all human. But my department has taken a very active role in ADA compliance here recently. We've spent a year evaluating all of our existing facilities for any type of ADA compliance issue. We've reported on that. We're making a goal. You'll see coming forward in the next budget cycle a 5-year plan for what it's going to take to remediate all of those past ADA issues to bring those into compliance. The state allows, every community a certain amount of time to identify, plan for, budget, and complete those type projects. So it's our goal to catch everything on the front end, but realistically speaking, we have human designers and we have human contractors, and there are errors that get out there. Our job is to try to catch as many of those before they get finalized.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Nick, good report. I might just add, if you believe everything you read on Facebook, we only do stuff downtown. That looked like, to me, we were doing stuff all over Montgomery County. Okay, at this time, we have our zoning cases. We have 4 applications tonight. Our first case is CZ 13-2018, application of Don Teasley and Lisa McLean from R1 to R4. This was deferred from August. We will have a public hearing on this zoning case. So, Mr. Tyndall?
Thank you, Mayor. Not used to going here an hour into the meeting. Great to learn about everything about this community, though. This was deferred from August, originally heard by the commission in May, so it's had 2 deferrals of 2 months each time, and we felt it was important for the new commissioners to hear this again and hold another public meeting. This was an application for rezoning from R1 to R4. It's on Harper Road, just outside the city limits, south in the Sango area. This is our zoning map for the area. As you can see, it's R1. It's adjacent to C5 parcels to the north. There is some R4 to the west there on Excel Road. The application is Don Teasley and Lisa McLean. It's approximately 8.03 acres. They, again, wish to go to R4, which would be multifamily or high-density single-family development. The Planning Commission recommended approval, and the Regional Planning Commission also recommended approval. Reasons being the proposed zoning request is consistent with the adopted land use plan. The majority of the Highway 41A area in Sango is currently zoned commercial C1 through C5. An adjacent parcel to this request is also zoned C5. The adjacent parcel to the rear is Rest Haven Cemetery. I'll show you some photos here in a moment. And it is a good transition from the 700+ unit residential development to the east, which is currently under construction. If you've been out here, this parcel's going way back, 700+ units back there. Sango has continued to develop with commercial uses, single-family detached uses, and multifamily uses all the way south to Sango Drive, and multifamily housing is a continued need in this part of the county. This is a view down Harper Road with 41A to your rear, the properties to your left. This is additional to the view of the property. Behind there, you can barely start to make out Rest Haven Cemetery. This is the first home on the left as you enter Harper Road. The project would go adjacent to this. New iterations of this project actually have now left a R1 strip of land 90 feet wide to allow an additional home to the left of this home as a transition from the multifamily project. You can barely see the home on the right of this picture. We're now looking Harper Road back toward 41A. Property's on your right, and here, this is across the street. This is additionally across the street on Harper Road. Project site is at your rear. I also would like to point out that since this project's been applied for, just last month at the Planning Commission, the 2 C5 parcels here on Harper Road, which are actually in the city limits cuts across and then back down here, have been approved for 3 lots on each side of an acre or plus or minus each, and 2 strip centers have been approved on Harper Road with driveways onto Harper Road and onto 41A at the front there, approximately 5,000 square foot each building. I am available to take any questions.
Any questions of Mr. Tyndall? Commissioner Harper?
Thank you, Mayor. Jeff, I appreciate you being here. I know you and I have had several discussions on this rezoning. Quick question, with the 8 acres, even though I think I placed in front of the developer, every one of the commissioners, well, the mayor has a copy of his current plan. I think his current plan calls for 49 units total with 32 duplexes and 17 single-family homes. If we were to grant an R4 change of zoning, would that developer be held to that particular plan, or could he change and put a different iteration on this property?
The R4 zoning allows for a maximum of 16 units per gross acreage. Considering the smaller site, you may not get up to 16 in here. Unfortunately, at the county level, we don't have an in-between zone here. The next smallest thing would be the R2D, which would only allow duplexes in that area, no additional multifamily or other kind of attached units or even single-family units. One other thing I want to mention on this map, here's that strip of land. So the home was on this property, this larger one here, and then this strip of land, they're going to put a single family home. And then I've seen probably 3 different iterations of concepts for that area. I don't know if I've seen the most recent one you speak of. I think I saw one was more about 62 units, but I know they continue to work on that.
So an R4 zoning could be maximum of 128 units, is that right? Is my math right?
Yeah, if your math's right, yeah. If they had if they could figure out the drainage and the parking and get it all in there. Typically, we see those units when you have a large amount of wetlands, and you kind of cluster those units off the wetlands, and you use that wetlands as a credit, if you will. This is mostly upland, so I wouldn't see that density unless they went 3 high, which I don't think is really feasible out here either.
But if they had their R4 zoning, they could do that.
That's the max. They could sell the property. Yeah, that's what the zoning would allow.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Joe Smith?
Jeff, are there any drainage issues in the area on this side of 41A?
We hadn't identified any drainage issues, though at the public hearing last time, the cemetery did mention, and that's where the drainage would go on this property, would be to the east and then down toward 41A, toward the border of the cemetery, and they raised concerns over drainage, but we did not identify any out there at this time.
Okay, and across the road is Wilson, was it Wilson Point or Wilson Green?
Wilson Green.
What is it? What is it zoned?
That is a PUD. That's a very special planning zone that isn't used too often. It requires a lot of open space, which is why that has that park in the middle there, and it has a mix of townhouses, multifamily, and single-family houses over there. It requires 25% open space, though it does let you go to densities up to over 16 units per acre if you do that. Ideal for slightly larger properties. I'm not sure it would be ideal for this one. Okay. And that's also in the city, though, as well up there.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Commissioner Smith, I received an email today from the civil engineer. I don't know if you received it. That addressed it was sent to all the commissioners, and I think it addressed some of the drainage issues in there. I don't know if you've seen that or not, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
I did read that one. I just wanted to hear the director's
Commissioner Knight
from him.
So Mr. Smith actually asked the question that I was going to ask, and I did receive that email as well, and I reviewed it. But I'd also like to ask, just to hear it said, what are the plans for stormwater management?
Well, I'm not sure if the engineer is here tonight. I do see the potential developer. Every site that we review has to go through a stormwater review process. That's where you start building the detention basins and the swales and the bioretention. So it does have to get calculated out. Runoff that leaves the site currently, they cannot increase that runoff in a per square foot per minute kind of manner. Overall drainage may increase, but they stretch it out over time so that we're not releasing more drainage per hour, for instance. We'll just hold it a little longer and let it drain out. Folks down at the county codes office, they're the stormwater experts, and they review every application that comes in for site plan and subdivision for those standards.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Tyndall. At this time, we're going to go into public hearing to hear comments relating to CZ 13 2018. I would remind anyone that would like to speak for or against this case of your 3-minute time limit. If you would, please give us your name and address when you come to the podium. At this time, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on behalf of CZ 13 2018? Please come forward.
Good evening. My name is Daniel Welch. I live at 121 Danford Drive, and I am the guy asking for this rezoning case. I want to give you kind of a brief rundown of kind of what I've been through. I'm going to condense it a whole lot. The last time we asked for the deferral, let me back up here. I'm a local builder and developer. I've lived in Sango for my whole life, and my family's lived in Sango for about the past 100 years. So this community, I'm going to be here. I'm going to do what I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do. I've done other developments in this community, so I feel like I'm vested in the community. I just want to give you a rundown of kind of what's happened the last time since we deferred it. I've met with the residents on Harper Road multiple occasions, and we've had multiple designs of the site plan. The last time that Lisa and I met with Sam and Shannon Jones, they liked the design that we had come up with, and that number was for 49 units. It was 17 single condos and then 16 duplexes, I believe. So that number came to 49. Also, too, next to Mr. Jones's property, I left an R1 lot that was in the first request, so that we could have a buffer, so that Mr. Jones could have a buffer right next to his property. Still willing to do that. So after we met with the Joneses, Ms. Jones sent out an email to all of the people that were on Harper Road that were really directly affected, and she said that she approved of the design and of the restrictions that I had come up with. The restrictions kind of helped me to a standard so that their property values didn't go below a certain dollar amount. So the Joneses were okay with that at that time. So in conjunction with Ms. Jones's email going out, I also sent out an email to the residents with a site plan, the building renderings, and a set of restrictions that I had put in place. And when I did that, Mr. McCoy, which is one of the he's one of the people that are directly affected by this project, he replied to my email with questions to the restrictions, and when I got those questions, I looked at them and I modified the restrictions, and answered all of his questions to the best of my ability. As of today, as of today, none of the Harper Road residents have replied to me on that email, so I'm assuming that everything's okay. I put it at the end of my email, if anybody had any questions or comments, to please give me a call. Be glad to answer any questions that they would have. And if you guys have any other questions, my engineer, he couldn't make it tonight, and he said he would make himself available to answer any questions. If we needed to meet on site, we could do that. And if you guys have any other questions for me right now, I'll be glad to answer them.
Commissioner Harper.
Thanks, Daniel, for being here tonight. I actually received an email from Mr. McCoy in the last day, And Mr. McCoy had to be out of town tonight, but he was not in favor of this and asked me to vote against this project. So just letting you know that he is not in favor of the project at present. Just to let you know. Thanks.
All right. Mr. Welch, thank you. Oh, do you have a question, Commissioner King?
Sure. Mr. Welch, are all 49 units going to be for sale, or any of them going to be rental units?
They're all going to be for sale. They're all going to be for sale. Sir?
No rental property?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Welch.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else in the audience would like to speak on behalf of CZ 13, 2018? Anyone in the audience to speak in opposition to CZ 13, 2018?
My name is Shannon Jones. I'm at 219 Harper Road. I'm actually the next door neighbor to this project. I'm very torn about this project. I think that this project can enhance the community. However, there are some difficulties that I have with this. One being the water. Our backyard stays wet 8 to 9 months out of the year. I am very concerned of how water is going to continue to be able to go back across our backyard into this property, because our property is higher than the 8 acres that are on here. And when it comes to the actual development of the property, the second part that I have an issue with is, where are the assurances for the residents of Harper Road that if something was to happen to Mr. Welch, if he was to win a $500 million lottery and decide that he does not want to develop this property and it sells, what are the restrictions for the next owner of this property? I would like to be assured before this is passed, or what steps I have to go through to make sure that there will not be any more than 49 units to be able to be developed on these 8 acres. So that is my biggest question for the commission, is the water control, because that property is extremely wet all the time, and then also the restrictions for later on if Mr. Welch decides not to develop it and to sell it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience to speak in opposition to CZ 13, 2018? All right, at this time we're going to close the public hearing on 13, CZ 19, 2018, application of Krista Ferraccio and Anna Ferraccio from R1 to C5. Mr. Tyndall.
Thank you, Mayor. This is 16 and a half plus or minus acres out there, a little further out in Sango on 41A across from Welsh Road. It's a relatively level 16 acres. It only has approximately 160 feet of frontage on 41A South. The tract is fully foliage. It's in the Sango planning area. The growth rate for this area is well above that average for the county. The applicant wishes to go to C5, which is our general commercial district and our highway commercial district, wishing to apply for a self-storage facility. Staff had some concerns about this when we were discussing it internally. Eventually we came up with our recommendation of approval. We actually felt that the minimal frontage actually lends itself pretty well to this kind of a use, where the self-storage would actually be set far back off the highway, out of sight. And we'll show you some pictures here in a moment. Eventually the staff did recommend approval, and the Regional Planning Commission also recommended approval. You do have some C5 parcels to the west out here, a couple different scattered ownerships, some single family zoning also mixed in. It's just east there of Bagwell Road. For those of you who know the area, the Ferraccios also own that private airstrip that's out there just to the north, that east-west parcel just above it. This is 41A going back toward town. The site will be up on your right, sort of where that billboard is here. We're getting a little closer. So there's a bit of a rise too with the limited frontage. The property doesn't start till you get up towards the rise. This is the property owner directly to the east. Property's right there on the left where you start to see the tall grass. This is the frontage. Like I said, it's only 160 feet of frontage right there. And then as you go further down, there already is a self-storage facility that stores RVs and does some minor outdoor sales, some boats, and there's some storage units. This time, Mr. Ferraccio informed us, for what it's worth, that he would only be building T structures or lean-tos for a boat, RV, and other kind of vehicle storage out there. There wouldn't be actual self-storage units on site yet at this time. This is a view from Welch Road looking 41A towards town. And this is Welsh Road looking across to the property. You can see the very limited frontage to the left over there, right where that pole is, and to the right where the grass hasn't been mowed. So not a lot of frontage for other potential uses. This is from the property. I'm sorry, no, this is a little further up looking back toward the property just so you get the sight distance. It would be right next to where those billboards are on the left.
Any questions of Mr. Tyndall? Thank you, sir. We'll now go into public hearing for CZ 19-2018. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on behalf of this zoning application?
Good evening. Chris Ferraccio, the property owner. I'm the one petitioning for the change. Really just to answer any of the questions you guys might have. As they spoke, I do not have any intention of building storage units, buildings, enclosed structures whatsoever. The intention is just to have open air parking for boats, campers, RVs, things of that nature. As he said, it has a very narrow road frontage. My intention again is to have a single paved entrance into that. That will go between the trees. I plan on keeping a very thick tree line all the way around the property to keep it very obscured. It'll be very covert, just a single entrance, and will not be an eyesore whatsoever.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? All right.
Appreciate your time.
You. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak on behalf of CZ 19-2018? Anyone in the audience to speak in opposition to CZ 19-2018? We will now close the public hearing on 19 CZ 20-2018 application of Scott Appleton from AG to C5. Mr. Tyndall.
Sorry, one last thing I'd like to add to this. I think Mr. Ferraccio said he'd leave the trees up. This would require a buffer on all three sides to the north and to the east when they do develop it. Since it's against the ag and the residential properties. CZ 20 is a request of 1 acre out on Highway 149 in the Palmyra area. Applicant is wishing to take their ag property and rezone it to C5 for a, as they propose, a barbecue restaurant. The property is a portion of a wooded tract fronting on Highway 149. The entire tract is pretty steep in areas and has varying topography. The area of the rezoning provides the potential level area for grading and future development. It's in the Cumberland planning area. It's the least densely populated area in Montgomery County. The proposed zoning request is consistent with the adopted land use plan. It has adequate infrastructure that serves the site, and no adverse environmental issues were identified at this time. The adopted land use plan indicates that commercial zones should be established in rural areas to support convenience operations, provides goods and services that could save trips to the city. And C5 is an appropriate use on highway and arterial commercial districts, and Highway 149 is considered an arterial highway. Staff recommended approval, and the Planning Commission recommended approval. Properties here on the left, up that rise up there. As we said, it's got a bit of a draw in between the two parcels. This is on the corner. Forget what that side street is. We'll see it on the map in a second here. He's not developing the corner parcel, but 1 acre in. He owns all this 5 or 6 acres in this area, including the cell tower in the back. This is a view straight on of the site where it's the most level of his land out there. This is just to the east of the property, so you're looking at that tree line there is the property in question for the rezoning. He is building a house out there right now, the owner is, so this would be directly to the east of it. This is slight clearing, you can barely make it out. That's where that last picture was taken, right in that clearing of that trees. So not a lot going on out there, a lot of trees, a lot of frontage, and it's a very wide right-of-way out there with the state highway. Any questions?
Any questions of Mr. Tyndall on CZ 2018? Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on behalf of CZ 2018? We're now going to public hearing. Anyone to speak on behalf? Anyone to speak in opposition? We'll close the public hearing on CZ 2018, CZ 2018, application of Ronnie Powers from AG to R1A. Mr. Tyndall.
Thank you, Mayor. This is property off of Highway 76, just outside the city limits. Let me get to my sheet here. It's approximately 46.25 acres. It's adjacent to subdivision out there where Superior Lane is, and there's several stub roads already zoned R1A. Sorry, it's already R1A out there and a mix of R1. This is the ag parcel. The proposed zoning request is consistent with the adopted land use plan. The R1A zoning is an extension of the existing R1A single-family residential zoning to the east. The Clover Hills and Clover Glen subdivisions were designed and required street stubs for future development of this property, and adequate infrastructure does already exist in the area. These are some of the pictures of the stub roads that are out there. That's the Superior Lane and the cul-de-sac that exits to the now vacant property. This is looking back from that cul-de-sac. It's another one of the stub roads further down that would connect to the future areas of the property. This is looking out, it's Little Hope Road, looking across the street at the property. They will probably get one more entrance into this subdivision. They'll have to work with DOT and county highways to find the most adequate place. There are, as you know, it does get narrow there, and it's a pretty fast stretch of road. So there were site distance concerns. We also feel that taking some of the trees out or cleaning up some of the limbs would also help with the site distance out there. Here it is across the street. This is 76 facing east, so the property's on your right-hand side here. For those of you know the tobacco barn up there, and I'll show you that in a second, this is goes through the trees out there, so it really is some limited site distance, but we believe they can find that. Tobacco barn here is not part of this rezoning request. There's one small little out parcel that is the tobacco barn and will not be considered of it. There's two other parcels nearby that may be considered with this application in the future if they sell to the developer. We foresee the entrance coming somewhere to one or the other side of this barn, but we'll work on site distance when they come in for subdivision process.
Any questions of Mr. Tyndall on CZ 21? Commissioner Harper?
Thank you, Mayor. Jeff, just a quick question. This is merely an extension of the R1A that's already in place, right?
Yes, a little hard to see on my screen. I think it's better up there. The darker yellow you see down here is R1A. The lighter yellow represents R1 properties, but this previous subdivision, I think it said it was Clover Hill, is already R1A. It would be built to the same density.
And they'll have an addition of the road, which will help as far as getting in and out of the subdivision, right?
Right. Right now, you have to come up to the road here. Internally to the subdivision, there's a stub there, there's a stub down here, and there's one that also comes across there. So there are already 3 connection points to continue it pretty seamlessly. So up here in this small area where you have that frontage, there's the tobacco barn where it cuts out just a little bit to one side or the other, wherever it fits best. We'd love to see it go across from Little Hope Road there, but that property that fronts Little Hope Road on this side of the road is not owned by this developer at this time. If they do, we would try to make that a 4-way intersection. That's the most ideal out there, but if not, they'll try to find the most ideal place for site distance. Probably have to add turning lanes, I would assume, as well out there.
This is another one of those zoning cases in my district, and I haven't had any response negatively at all, so which is quite unusual for my district. So,
well, it's got good access out to the interstate right there.
Commissioner Knight.
This may seem like a silly question, but any plans for bike lanes and sidewalks?
Along the state route or internally to the subdivision?
Internally to the subdivision.
Internally to the subdivision, Sidewalk is not required on, oh, you'll see back to the picture that's in there. Some of it has sidewalk. They have out on two sides of the street there, and here in the older section, you have no sidewalk. Well, they're not going to come back and put it in here. Most modern subdivisions we see in the county, even though it's not required, are putting in sidewalk.
Thank you.
Commissioner Joe Smith.
I'd just like to say I really think it's a good idea, especially if they can get that entrance across from Little Hope Road. Anybody who's driven down 76 and turned onto North Woodson or tried to come off of North Woodson onto Highway 76 knows it's a dangerous intersection. One that I've actually talked with a couple of people about from TDOT because it's a nightmare, especially for young new drivers, and there's a lot of them in that subdivision. I know exactly where that one is, Clover Glen subdivision, and to add an entrance out the backside there would be an amazing addition to that subdivision.
Yeah, we'll definitely get one. If we can't get the one off of Little Hope, we'll get one nearby. And
you said possibly we'd be able to work with TDOT about getting some turning lanes put in through that area?
We would likely require it. I mean,
awesome.
You can't, there'll probably be either a decel or definitely a left turn lane coming into the property, even though there's not a lot of traffic that comes from the east. You need to have that safety so that people aren't running over you while you're trying to turn in. So when it comes to site design time and they do their traffic assessment for that, they will work that out with Mike Frost and TDOT. All
right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. At this time, we'll go into public hearing to hear comments related to CZ 21 2018. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on behalf of this application?
Ladies and gentlemen of the commission, my name is John Clark. I'm the agent for this particular rezoning case, as well as an architect. Be happy to take any questions you may have about this rezoning case.
Any questions of Mr. Clark? Thank you, Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Mayor Durr.
Anyone else in the audience would like to speak on behalf of CZ 21 2018? Anyone in the audience to speak in opposition to CZ 21 2018? We will now close the public hearing. Commissioners, now on to our resolutions. Resolution 1895 is a resolution amending the Clarksville-Montgomery County Growth Plan. This was deferred from September. Mr. Tyndall, anything new to add?
Thank you, Mayor. I just put together 3 or 4 slides here to codify what we talked about at the budget hearing there. The 2018 growth amendment for the growth plan was requested by the city of Clarksville to allow them to further develop their property into an athletic complex, but it also allows the surrounding properties to develop into supporting commercial and other uses. This map showing you the area where PGA 4, which is Planned Growth Area 4, just south of Rossview, and it actually encompasses all that Rossview area. South of Rossview Road would be going from PGA 4 to growth area, thereby allowing different types of zones in the county or allowing the city to proceed with annexation of this land. This is a blow up of the area. This shows the entire 506 plus or minus acres that would be requested to go into the urban growth boundary. City limits right now is down the interstate, then it cuts up on the Red River for a few properties. That's urban growth boundary in there. It's just kind of a cutout, hasn't been developed yet, but when it does, likely they'll annex at that time. Here's the industrial park up here, Rossview Road. City owns this parcel out here, the parcel on the Red River, and this parcel back up in here. All the rest of the parcels are privately held or held in partnerships right now. There's going to be a road, and I think some of you have seen that article in the paper last week with a conceptual design where a road would come in and then the ballparks and other features would be situated throughout the lower half of this property there. So when this first came out, I visited many of these property owners with Heather Fleming from the city. Everyone in purple, including the city's properties, said they were willing to annex into the city. There were 2 parcels, and we've discussed this several times. This parcel right here is the heirs of Ida Collier. They just have a lot of folks to get in touch with. They're not for it, they're not against it. They just have to get their whole family together. They didn't even know they owned it until we told them about it. So they're trying to work that through in their family connections. And then there's a parcel up here owned by the Richardsons, They, again, are not for or against it, have not really stated either way, but just didn't want to talk about it at this time. So that left us at that position to be what we called the donut holes, 2 sections of county land that would be surrounded by city land that would be served by county services, sheriff, county fire department, different utilities out there and such. I'd like to report that, to our benefit, I guess you'd say, Public Chapter 1047 was passed in May earlier this year, signed by the governor. It was allowed to do small annexations of less than 10 parcels where 1/3 of the folks are non-consenting. Not against it, but just haven't been able to consent for one reason or another. This type of situation we have here. So we've split this into 2 different annexations, 2 different processes slightly with 2 different kind of hearings and public notifications. The larger annexation you see there in blue is currently being studied by the city with a plan of service that includes all the city properties and most of the potential commercial properties. For those of you who know this area, there's a small church and then a, quote, private road or private drive. I think it even has a sign that says private drive on the right side there. That church on the corner of the old AME church has recently been sold for a commercial development, so it's going to be torn down here shortly. And the rest of those parcels are off that private drive, which is basically an easement back there to those parcels. What this allows then is that when both annexations are complete by the city, you'll have no donut holes out there. You'll have one contiguous area of city limits that would come down the interstate. They're going to annex Rossview Road, both sides of the road, so then that the city streets department could control that and take that off the county responsibility for maintainage and plowing and all that other kind of stuff. Go up to the small church across from the Cattlemen's Association and come straight down where Stone's Manor is, all the way to the Red River, and then pick up the city limits south here and go down. So just extending the city limits. This area is roughly 500 acres. I'm sorry, the larger area is about 600 acres for the growth plan area, taking in a couple IDB properties that want to have the potential option around the Burger King to annex if they wish. That's all. So again, this is what the growth plan facilitates. The growth plan doesn't drive this. This is all handled at the city level with a lot of state requirements on notification, types of public hearings, and all that. So what's up for vote is the text amendment along with the map amendment to promote this boundary, which will allow any properties within it to annex into the city limits.
Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to be clear for the record, what is the total number of homes that would be annexed if this was to be passed?
Sure. And one of the things we look at when we do the plan of service with the city is the number of homes and number of residents. Right now we have 8 total homes with about 14 total residents out there. Commissioner Knight?
So last county commission meeting, it was stated that, semi-partially quoting you, we haven't contacted anybody and plans are in place to contact individuals to let them know. This county commission meeting, I'm hearing the exact same thing. So my question to you is, what plans do you have for, what is your plan of action for, or whoever, what is the plan of action to contact these individuals to get everything in place and get everything squared away?
Sure, and I apologize if I gave that impression. Every one of these property owners has either had a letter at a minimum, and most have had a on-site consultation by either the city or the city and myself. Annexations are not, we facilitate the annexations at the Planning Commission, but we don't say necessarily execute them. That's handled at the city with city attorney, their chief of staff and that folks. So the chief of staff for the city and myself have visited many of the individuals out here who are either on the fence or just wanted to know more or didn't respond to their initial letter. A lot of the folks in here, for those who know the area, are heirs to the folks who sold the land to the city anyway. So they have the big potential to gain from future commercial development of that area over time. in the blue area, when that goes for plan of service, it'll just get announced in the paper and have a public hearing. But when we get down to that smaller yellow area, since we're invoking Public Chapter 1047, they will each get an individual certified letter that says, this is up for vote, this is when the vote is, and this is when you have an opportunity to come out. And it has a public hearing session, just slightly different than that other public hearing. But there's actual notification required for the smaller annexation in this case.
Thanks. Last question. So let's say, for instance, you contact these individuals and they say no, because correct me if I'm wrong, you stated that they haven't stated yes or no currently. It's just a matter of getting that information from them. So that being said, if they say no, what's the plan of action then?
Sure. Everything in blue, I have an affidavit written from the property owner with their deed that says we're interested. In the yellow area, I have an affidavit with a deed for 4 of the 6 properties that say we want to do this. Public Chapter 1047 says then the other 2 properties can be brought in regardless of owner consent for these kind of instances, so you avoid having a donut hole. But it's limited, again, to only less than 10 properties. Of those 10 properties, only 1/3 can be non-consenting or having not given consent, and that acreage has to be less than half the acreage. So we meet all those requirements in this annexation here. And I will also add, Public Chapter 1047 expires January 1st, 2023. So I believe it was made with the intent that it allows cities to clean up some small instances like this before they probably go with a very no more annexations policy or voluntary only policy.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Commissioner Beal?
2 questions. First question, what kind of feedback have you received from the residents in the subdivisions surrounding this area?
We haven't received any because we haven't approached them. When this was being discussed in the Growth Plan Committee, which was the Regional Planning Commission, which was meeting since about May, the decision was to leave those subdivisions out at this time as to not confuse the situation with what the city requested, which the big old process was Mayor McMillan wrote to Mayor Durrett and said, I would like to open up the growth plan. Mayor Durrett writes to me, says, I've been requested to open up the growth plan. We agree, you can proceed. We commenced the Planning Commission as the Growth Committee to study this. We looked at it in several different iterations. We had a couple different configurations of that border until it was settled on by talking to the Regional Planning Commission and other owners out there, the IDB, for instance, on that boundary, which was this is the final boundary we came up with. We had a couple iterations which went up Rollo Lane or which went a little further out, but we said at this time, let's do this. At that time, Mayor Durrett, and he can vouch for this, is we're going to study the growth plan once this gets done into what we're going to call phase 2, and we're going to look at the entire county. So there is the potential in a year and a half from now, those areas are included in the growth area, but at this time we wanted to keep the scope very specific to the athletic complex and the surrounding properties.
Okay, and second question, what happens if we vote no on this?
Well, and I'll defer.
Depends on how many vote no.
Yeah.
Sorry. If it fails with less than 2/3 majority, it's approved. That's state law. And then the state can come in and mediate it if they need to.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Gannon.
Thank you, Mayor. Basically, I feel that, let's just talk the facts. I feel that you've been fast-tracked on this in order to make it happen to where the soccer park could be annexed because it was purchased and then found out that it wasn't in the urban growth plan. And I think we've rushed to this fairly fast and been put kind of on a fast track and put a little pressure on the Regional Planning Commission to try to push forward and get this done in a very short amount of time. The law that's up there that says that if 2/3 of the people are there and 1/3 isn't, then by law, you can make them conform. In other words, they have no say of whether they can get annexed or not. I don't like forcing somebody to do that without having them consent. I personally have a problem with that. I don't feel comfortable with that. I don't know if you need more time to work with them to try to get them to sign or something like that, But I would very much like to see them agree to it rather than force it down their throat. That's just me. Thank you.
Commissioner Harper.
Thank you, Mayor. Jeff, I appreciate you being here. A couple of quick thoughts. I'm taking a 25,000 feet view to this rather than a 5,000 feet view. One of the things you mentioned is probably it makes sense in the future for Farmington and Stones Manor to be included in the urban growth boundary. That would appear to me to be a fair assessment on where the urban growth boundary should be. Why shouldn't we do that now rather than wait a year, 2, 3 years from now? It seems like to me would be an efficient use of our time to do that, even if it took us more time to do it.
I will say that, let's see, I guess this shows it. Planned Growth Area 4, which is in the green to the east there, allows for every zoning classification that the urban growth boundary does. So it doesn't really gain anything. The only thing that those properties gain is the ability to annex, which would allow for obviously the lower water and sewer rates, allow for the fire department to respond and police instead of the sheriff and the volunteer fire departments. That's what you gain. Again, we did look at that, and the Planning Commission, or Growth Committee, I should say, it's one and the same, but the Growth Committee did look at different types of configurations of this to go up, like I said, Rollo, and allow maybe the multifamily to get in at this time. But again, to keep it simple, we decided to go with this at this time, with the way the annexation laws, and I know it's hard to sometimes differentiate the growth plan and annexation. You know, once it goes to annexation, that's a city matter, and they handle it legally with their own folks and their own notification. It does get passed through our office, but you know, the growth plan requires both city and county to approve the plan. The future iteration of the growth plan may, at that time, go out and include those areas, but you would, you really don't want to go into a subdivision and start doing what's the reverse of the idea of having donut holes, is having islands of city land too, and then allowing one parcel at a time in a subdivision to come into the city and not another. So you really want to get entire chunks of subdivisions, whether it's a phase or the whole thing at a time. And honestly, the way annexation laws are structured today, you'd have to get an entire neighborhood to do a referendum vote or agree in whole to do it, and that's pretty difficult anymore. But yeah, two different, one's the mechanism and one's the action on how to do it.
And I appreciate your explanation of it. I think with especially some of the new commissioners on, they may not be aware that the only properties that could be annexed, they first have to be in the urban growth boundary to be annexed. If they're not, then they're not able to be annexed, plain and simple.
I will say for the record, there's a property right here, the Mitchell property, who some of you know, this 20 acres right here, attempted to be annexed just a little bit ago until they found out we shouldn't have even heard it. You know, it wasn't even heard at that time. They couldn't have done it legally, so you know, they avoided that.
Commissioner Knight, I'm going to call on Commissioner Johnson. He hasn't spoke on this matter yet. Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just as a point of clarification, this is in my district, and in talking to the people who live in Stones Manor and Farmington, just as a matter of housekeeping, all of those people that live in those subdivisions, or at least the majority of them, or the ones that I have talked to, were very much aware of the city limits and the city boundaries when they moved into those subdivisions. They had no desire to live in the city. They moved into those subdivisions because they were in the county and because they did not want to be within the city limits. And if this restructuring is the first step in the process that would bring these people who live in Stones Manor and Farmington in the next couple of years into the city, then that becomes increasingly problematic. And that pushes me to side heavily with Commissioner Gannon that this starts to look worse and worse by the second. That's all. Thank you.
Commissioner Knight.
All right. First, let me say I want to wholeheartedly and fully agree with Commissioner Gannon when I say I find it kind of disturbing, as a matter of fact, that we would just grab something from someone without their consent. Sounds like a word I don't want to say right now, right? But that being said, I've gotten a lot of questions in regards to, and statements in regards to what people think this sports complex is. Some people says it's just for soccer. Some people say it's just for tournaments of some kind. So it may be out of our scope to ask, or a scope of concern to ask, but I'd like to know specifically, what is this complex being used for?
Well,
I mean, can my kids
I'm
go
just
there?
the messenger here. There was a pretty good newspaper article on it last week, but it has over a dozen soccer fields, some turf, some natural grass. It'll have natural walking trails, a canoe drop-in point. It has a lot of amenities similar to what the county engineer Nick Powell showed you earlier with Civitan Park. It could be done in phases where, you know, some is done now, some is done later. That's about the extent of what I know about it. They're working with their own private firm to discover what is the best use of that land and build it, you know, over phases. You're not going to drop all that off at once. That's a big investment. I think I just want to address one thing just to say about the fast track, and kind of the reason it's on a fast track. If the county were to vote to approve it, it goes to the Tennessee Local Government Planning Assistance Group, LGPAC, I think that's what it is, LGPAC. They only meet 4 times a year. The next time they meet is October 24th. So if that doesn't happen, the next time they meet is not going to be till after January, I guess, would be the next meeting. So we were hoping to make that meeting, and that's the only reason I think we've been on since the very beginning of the schedule. When we brought this to the Planning Commission, we kind of scoped out that overall schedule, and we have been working on this since May. One other thing, the map you see here, this is the current growth area map. So you'll see urban growth boundary to the west toward Woodlawn, up in the Tylertown area, down towards Sango. We are going to relook at the entire map, probably wipe the slate clean, come up with some methodology, and redraw these lines according to what the next 20-year growth needs are around the entire county, not just the Rossview area. So again, this is, for lack of a better word, a Band-Aid to allow for the annexation, because that process, when we go for phase 2, is going to take well into a year's time frame to get a lot of negotiations, a lot of meetings, and you'll have another opportunity to vote on that iteration of the plan when that comes up, and that'll be within all your terms here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall.
Okay.
Resolution 1810-1, resolution to adopt an interlocal agreement between the City of Clarksville and Montgomery County for joint funding from the Bureau of Justice Assistance of the United States Army of Justice on a joint award of federal burn justice assistant grant funds. This is a non-matching grant that we do every year. Any questions from any commissioners? Resolution 1810-2 is a resolution of Montgomery County Board of Commissioners authorizing the acceptance of grant funds from the Tennessee Department of Safety and Homeland Security, Tennessee Highway Safety Office. Again, this is a non-matching grant, a grant that we do every year. Any questions? Resolution 1810-3. Commissioners, I know in your iPads there's a ton of stuff. This is on page 136. It's a resolution to appropriate funds to employ an additional sheriff deputy for the law enforcement duties at Montgomery County Veterans Plaza. This would be amending the budget $53,244. It would fund this position from November to July of next year. We've had a request from some of our county tenants at Veterans Plaza for additional security, and this would have 2 security officers on duty at all times. Any questions? Resolution 1810-4, it's on page 138. Resolution to charge off debts in Montgomery County's clerk's office. This is $228. I think the clerk's done an awesome job. Any questions? Resolution 1810-5, resolution to amend the budget for funding to replace equipment at East Montgomery Volunteers Fire Service in the amount not to exceed $18,000. This is replacing a tanker that's been repaired once. It's on page 140 of your agenda. Any questions? Resolution 1810-6, resolution to amend the budget for funding to pay for services provided by local businesses during the tornado, which occurred on February 24th, 2018. It's on page 141. It's $40,550. None of these entities asked for this money, but I think the service that they provided to Montgomery County in the aftermath of the tornado that hit in Deepwood subdivision and also in Farmington subdivision, they all provided a great service to our community. Any questions? Resolution 1810-7, resolution regarding revisions of rules for public speaking and appearance at county commission meetings and public hearing on zoning matters. Mr. Riccone, do you want me to kind of spell this out, or would you like to? I'll go ahead. You don't look like you want to. This is a resolution that if there is an item on our agenda, that has a public hearing, we will not allow public comments prior to our meeting. That's basically it in a nutshell. So if we are having a public hearing, if someone asks to speak, and we have public hearings on zoning cases, and from time to time we may have one on something else, but if someone asks to speak to our commission prior to our meeting, this rule will not allow that. Any questions? Resolution 1810-8 is a resolution to change the membership of the Airport Authority Liaison Committee as recommended by the Rules Committee. The Rules Committee recommended taking that membership from 3 to 1. Any questions? Commissioner Leverett.
So so that one member, is that someone who's already on that committee, or how does that work?
No, ma'am, it will be a new appointment.
It would be a mayoral, it would be you
yes, ma'am, I think that's, I don't know that that one requires, commission approval. Debbie, could you help me? Does it? No, it's a nomination. I don't think it requires, it does require commission approval.
It does require commission approval. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Resolution 1810, Commissioner Keene.
Thank you, Mayor Dart. My only problem with that one member is if he or she is not present, then we don't have any representation there to bring back to the commission to report on what's going on. I think probably we need 2 instead of 1, in my opinion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Resolution 1810-9, initial resolution authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $2,550,000 general obligation public improvements bond of Montgomery County, Tennessee. That's found on page 145 on your agenda. Any questions? Resolution 1810-10 is a resolution. Commissioner Leverett, I'm sorry.
Can you just explain this one a little further, sir? I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am. This is adding. It's $2,550,000. That is for the funding of the Rotary Park Nature Center. And if you look down 2 items below that, where we have a $500,000 matching grant, to accept that grant, we also have to fund the project. And during our budget hearings back in the spring, we knew that grant was out there. We knew that our Parks and Recreation was applying for it. The Budget Committee felt we would not put that money in our budget until we saw whether or not we received the grant. And so now we've been authorized for the grant, and this is authorizing that funding.
Okay, so it's going to the nature park. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. 1810-10 is really just a housekeeping resolution authorizing issuance of general obligation public improvement bonds for Montgomery County, Tennessee, in the aggregate principal amount not to exceed $2,550,000 in one or more series, making provisions for the issuance, sale, and payment of said bonds establishing the terms thereof and the disposition of proceeds therefrom, and providing for the levy of taxes for the payment of principal of premium, if any, and interest on the bonds. And that's just a mayor resolution that goes along with 1810-9. Any questions? Resolution 1810-11, a resolution to accept local parks and recreation grant funds in the amount of $500,000 to help with the construction of the Nature Center at Rotary Park. Any questions? Resolution 1810-12, found on page 173, a resolution amending the budget of the Montgomery County Parks and Recreation Department for additional Park Service Coordinator 2 position. Mr. Albert, I think that's about a $9,000 budget amendment. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's where we're eliminating 2 part-time positions and creating this 1 full-time position.
And they will be permanently eliminated from your budget.
That's correct.
Any questions on 1810-12? 1810-13 is a resolution consenting to the Industrial Development Board of the County of Montgomery negotiating and accepting payments in lieu of ad valorem tax with respect to a certain project in Montgomery County, Tennessee, and finding that such payments are deemed to be in furtherance of the public purposes of the board as defined in Tennessee Annotated Section 753-305. Commissioners, we have a resolution where the Industrial Development Board, by state law, is granted the authority to issue pilot payments. Montgomery County back in, I think it was 2008, maybe it was 10, passed a resolution that took that authority away from the Industrial Development Board if it was related to a residential project. And so any residential project now has to come to this body for approval. Mr. Tate is here. He's going to give you a presentation. The developers are here as well. This is a 96-unit housing facility. They're looking at a 10-year pilot that would pay Montgomery County over the course of that pilot $390,000 versus what the property is paying today is about $1,082. So it'd be $10,820. Mr. Tate, would you like to add anything to that?
You pretty much summed it up, Mayor.
Well,
Thank
and
you.
the other thing I think it does, it provides workforce housing, something that we need. This is, you could call it, go ahead, Frank.
Good evening. In January 2005, Mayor, I believe the County Commission amended that resolution taking away the housing project piece from the IDB. This will now require County Commission approval. Bunch Development Services is an affordable housing consulting group looking to develop an affordable housing area on a tract of land off of Dunlop Lane outside of the city limits of Clarksville. The project, as the mayor has already said, is 96 units. The investment in the county for construction on this project is estimated to be about $14 million. Due to the change in the law regarding tax credits for this deal to work, the development will need to request a pilot. This agreement, as the mayor did already allude to, would generate 39,000 new taxes a year for 10 years versus the 1,082 existing. We are seeing the need for this type of workforce housing development in Montgomery County with our housing shortage. The IDB has been briefed, and with your support, we will add this to our upcoming agenda. I appreciate y'all's time. Thank you.
Any questions of Mr. Tate? This is located at the intersection of Rollo Lane and Dunlop Lane. Any questions of Mr. Tate? Mr. Harper?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question, Mr. Tate. Any plans in place to help us at the intersection of Rollo Lane?
I can't answer that at this time because I don't know. I don't believe so.
Any other questions of Mr. Tate? Thank you, sir. If you want to stay up there, you can. Resolution 1810-14, resolution of County Commission of Montgomery County, Tennessee, approving an economic impact plan for the 7th and Main development area. That's found on page 176. on your iPads. I'll just let Mr. Tate handle it. How's that?
You sure? JPW LLC would like to construct and open a 42-unit apartment complex in downtown Clarksville. The project will be located on the corner of 7th and Main. The apartment complex would consist of mainly studios, one-bedroom apartments, and some two-bedroom units. The project fits the statutory requirements to qualify for a TIF. It is located on the boundary line outside the existing downtown TIF district. The economic impact plan would permit certain tax incremental financing to be provided through the issuance of the board's bonds, notes, or other obligations in the total amount not to exceed $799,000 pursuant to Chapter 53, Title 7 of the Tennessee Code Annotated. And if this project proceeds forwards with the Commissioner's support, an investment of $5.4 million is anticipated to occur. This economic impact plan is the exact same format as the existing downtown TIF. It was discussed to modify the current plan due to the 2017 TIF already in place. It was strongly encouraged that we proceed with a new district.
The developer has provided just a few slides. I know some of y'all have asked for that. I think that's in their packets as well. But Skip, if you just want to jump through them, I know Ms. Willoughby is here. I don't know if she wants to say anything, but as Mr. Tate basically said, 45 units, studios and one bedrooms. It's a three-story multifamily facility. If you go to the next slide, please. That gives a proposed site plan. Next slide, please. Ms. Willoughby has completed 3 other projects inside of, really in our downtown, Cortland Apartments, Gracie Court Apartments, and the Phoenix. And they're all 3 great properties, in my opinion. She's done an outstanding job, and I think she's running at about 100% occupancy on all of those. And I think it's a much-needed addition to our downtown. Any questions of myself, Mr. Tate, or Ms. Willoughby? Commissioner Pritchard.
Yes, sir. Sir, income-wise, is this going to be for students? Is this housing for a little bit lower income level that's living in that area now?
For it to qualify as a TIF, it has to be considered moderate income or below.
Okay, thank you.
Good question.
Any other questions? Mr. Tate, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Do we need to spend the system rules on this? Yeah. Commissioners, without objection, Resolution 1810-15, this is something that came up at the last minute, and we'd like to try to get this on our agenda. So without objection, we're going to suspend the rules to discuss this tonight, and then we'll have to physically vote to suspend the rules next Monday night. With the chair seeing no objection, this is a resolution to approve a lease agreement for operation and this is on page 194, a lease agreement for operation of a concession stand at Downtown Commons Park. This has gone through our purchasing office. We sent out to 21 different vendors. Unfortunately, we had one response, and so you have a copy of the lease and the I don't think you have a copy of the lease. It's all in the resolution. Correct, Mr. Harvey?
All the major topics are in the resolution. There is a lease that's under preparation. We just got the bids in last week. I met with the only bidder, and we've worked out the terms of the lease to be presented to you, so we can attach that next week if you want it.
Okay. Commissioner Harper.
Thank you, Mayor. Only one reservation I have about this. My family spends enough money at Golly G's as it is. But seriously, I think it'll be a great opportunity for us. It'll be great. Add 5 more pounds on me. Thanks.
You have never treated me at Golly G's, so maybe you'll get the opportunity up here if it's approved. All right. Any questions from anyone else on 1810-15? On to nominating committee nominations. Commissioner Gannon.
The nominating committee met today. And we will put into a motion next week for Delinquent Tax Sales and Release Committee, a 2-year term, maximum 4 years. Commissioner Charlie Keene was nominated to serve his second 2-year term to expire in October 2020.
Thank you, Commissioner Gannon. Any questions? On the Airport Authority, without objection, because I think there's probably going to be a motion to add an additional member to our airport liaison, I have Commissioner Pritchard to serve a 2-year term to expire 2020. If that occurs, I'll have another nomination without objection for the Airport Authority next Monday night. And if it doesn't occur, it'll be I will nominate Ms. Pritchard. Under county mayor appointments, the Personnel Advisory Committee, it's a 2-year term. Commissioner Carmel Chandler appointed to replace Commissioner Joe Creek for a 2-year term to expire May 2020. And commissioners, if you'll see the reports that have been filed, I'm sure we'll have some additional reports come next Monday. No old business. No new business. Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could just take a moment, and hopefully I would not be out of order or be out of protocol. I just wanted to take a moment to thank the commissioners and the mayor, chief of staff, the ladies in the office, Ms. Baggett, Ms. Gentry, who called and checked on me after my recent incident. I just wanted to publicly thank one of the city employees at the Parking Authority, Mr. Booker Daly, members of the Sheriff's Office, Terry Welsh, Mark Renorick, Julie Webb, and Chief Edwards is here tonight. I spoke to him earlier. He has some really, really wonderful, exceptional, and very talented and well-trained people at EMS, and I have no doubt that they saved my life. So thank you to all of you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Commissioner Butts.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to take this time to ask if y'all could keep in your prayers the community down there, Indian Mound, Oakwood, Woodlawn. As many of you know, there's a man on the loose. I do want to thank the Sheriff's Department, both Stewart County and Montgomery County, and I ask that you keep them law enforcement officers in your prayers. They're doing a great job, and they will get him. Thank you.
Commissioner Harper.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick note. I felt like last month in a discussion about a zoning case, I stepped on the toes of Commissioner Johnson a bit. I wanted to offer a public apology on that. I felt like I owed him that. Typically, we've deferred the zoning cases to the commissioner in that district, and I felt like my comments could have been misunderstood a bit, but they were meant in the best of intents. So I wanted to say I'm very sorry about that.
Thank you. Under our announcements, just a reminder, our 2019 legislative session is tomorrow night at 5:30 at Civic Hall. We look forward to seeing all of you there. Reception for all the commissioners will be hosted by F&M Bank this Thursday evening at 5:30 at the F&M Bank on Public Square. Even if you haven't RSVP'd with your attendance, you're invited and urged to attend. And the last reminder is you've all been invited to attend a budget orientation on Thursday, October 18th at 5 o'clock. This will be a great opportunity for our new elected commissioners to ask questions about the budget and get acquainted with the process. We urge all of our commissioners to attend. I would ask that if you have some specific questions about some items in the budget or about the process, if you'll let us know beforehand, hopefully we can get those questions as part of our presentation, and it won't be a lot of questions asked of everyone, even though I know there will be a lot of questions. And lastly, I know Commissioner Butts mentioned it, but just ask that we keep all of our, number one, the families of the ones that have tragically lost their lives by this deranged person. It's probably a nice word to say, but certainly keep them in your thoughts and prayers, and all of our law enforcement, especially our Montgomery County officials. And then Commissioner Joe Creek, most of you know. We hope Mr. Joe's on the mend. I have to tell you, he called me today and told me, he said, I will not be at the commission meeting tonight. It's the second one he's missed in 28 years since 1990. There may be a couple of you in here that may not have even been born in 1990. The internet wasn't invented in 1990, and Jeff was a hippie. So that tells you how long ago that's been, and he had a lot of hair. But also, Commissioner Johnson, glad to see you on the mend. Commissioner Woodruff, we want you to get well as well. Commissioner Knight, glad you're mended as well. Our EMA director, Mr. Ed Baggett, he had a little procedure done today, and Ed is doing really, really good according to Mr. Edwards. So just wish good health on all of you, and we'll see y'all all tomorrow night. We're adjourned.